Hey everybody, it's DM Gallibond, and this is Last Week from the Table for April 13th, 2021. In this show, we're going to talk about what happened in the Thursday night Sword Coast Chronicles game, in our planning session for the Saturday night Greyhawk game, and in our Sunday Walker of Waterdeep game. Let's get started. Okay, so on Thursday night in the Sword Coast Chronicles game, most of the party was waking up at the Wachter house, where they had spent the night with Lady Wachter's family. And our dwarf character, Krenraid, he had missed last week's sessions because the player had to work, was called into work early, very early for him. He's in the UK, so it was like 2:30 in the morning he had been called into work. That's ridiculous. So anyway, he hadn't been able to join us the week before. So he woke up at the Blue Water Inn and made his way over to the Wachter house to meet up with the rest of the party. They had breakfast. Lady Wachter sort of reiterated her offer to the party that she would be able to assist them if they would do a small service for her. Basically disrupting the celebration that was going to happen, that the crazy Burgomeister was going to have. So they thanked her, and they all decided, we really need to talk about this. So they got out of there, and they went back to the Blue Water Inn. And on their way there, they saw Rictavio. Now, Rictavio is the guy that was from the carnival, and he had been introduced to the party under the name of Thanos because somebody in the chat had paid to rename an NPC, and I just couldn't remember that. So I started calling him by Rictavio, and everybody figured out who we were talking about. And so I need to write those things down when somebody renames a PC. Sorry, my bad. So anyway, we talked with Rictavio, and they learned a little bit more about him. They learned that he is under the impression that the only way to truly be free of Barovia is to rid the land of its oppressive overlord. And he apparently has some tools to do that. But he also has this big carnival wagon, and there was something large and heavy and alive inside it. And he introduced it to him. This is a large saber-toothed tiger that he calls Fluffy. And so Krenraid was just absolutely smitten with this creature, and was given the privilege of feeding it its breakfast, a 5-pound wolf steak. Then Rictavio took the party members up to the front of the wagon and began talking with them about sort of strategy. He gave them more of a history lesson of where Strahd came from and Strahd's origins and how he got to Barovia, and also explained his connection with the Vistani, why there's a connection there. And he also revealed that it was no accident that the Vistani joined his carnival, because he had apparently been seeking them out because he was wanting to come here. So he was wanting to do something about the vampire Strahd. So they figured that much out. And then when they started talking about things that might be helpful to them, he revealed, well, he has a whole cache of weapons and some minor magical items and some items that aren't magical but would be helpful. So he had some silver-tipped crossbow bolts, a silvered short sword, has some holy water, some holy symbols, some wooden stakes, some garlic, a couple of scrolls that he would be willing to give to the party that have some spells that are effective against undead. The party also, party told him, well, we kind of are friendly with the Vistani up in that camp because we saved the little girl. And they invited us back to meet someone called, their great aunt called Eva. And Rictavio was like, well, if you don't come with me, I'm not going to share this stuff with you. You can buy. He allowed them to purchase the short sword and purchase the crossbow bolt. But he wasn't, and I think he gave them a holy symbol and maybe some wooden stakes. But he wasn't going to give them all the holy water and the scrolls and everything unless they came with him. And he said, well, where are you going? He says, I've got some friends over in Kresk. I was planning to leave today. I can wait until tomorrow morning, no later, and go to Kresk. And they said, well, we want to go talk to the folks at the Vistani camp. So they went up there, they talked to them. They didn't mention anything about Rictavio to them. Found out that Madame Eva was not there, but it's curious. They did find a curious coincidence. Lugash told them that on the same day that there's going to be the Festival of the Sun in Vallaki, the Vistani are also going to have a festival, and Madame Eva is going to be there for that. So, coincidence? Maybe, maybe not. They're very curious to learn what this Madame Eva, or this Great Aunt Eva, might have to say, and they really want to meet her. They did a sending to Rictavio, and Rictavio says, look, if you're not back here by tomorrow morning, I'm leaving for Kresk. If you want to find me later, come find me in Kresk. I have friends and allies there. And so clearly he wants to be away from Vallaki before this Festival of the Sun happens, for whatever reason. So they spent a lot of time talking to different people during the session, and that was about it. So they're right now, when we ended the session, they're at the Vistani camp. I'm uncertain as DM whether their thought is they want to just stay put there until this festival comes, or whether they want to go back into Vallaki for any reason, or whether they want to run over to Kresk. I mean, they've realized that Kresk is like 2 hours away by walking, so they could go over there and then come back during the day. I don't know what they're planning to do. So you can find out with me on Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, over on twitch.tv/Gallibond. Come join us and find out what happens next in the Sword Coast Chronicles. All right, so on Saturday night, we actually got started with our character creation. And I say we got started because we have 4 of our 5 main players show up. One of the 4 players that did show up gave us some good news personally for her, some not so good news personally for the campaign. She is part of a group that does historical reenactments at one of the forts. That's a state park in the state where she lives. And that means that now that things are starting to open up after a year of lockdown from COVID, the state park is beginning to open up for its spring season. And so starting in May, she and the other members of the reenactment group are going to be going over there on Saturdays, or working there Saturdays, at least one Saturday a month she has to be over there. And then they spend the night, Saturday night, and they do some stuff Sunday morning before they come back home. So at least one weekend every month, she's not going to be available to play. So we were talking about what kind of character can we have her play, and that sort of affected the things that other people wanted to play. And it took a long time to figure out sort of how we would work in a character that would have that would be a significant character that would be fun to play, but that wouldn't be wouldn't cause a huge hole in the party if she had to be away when there was going to be a significant battle. And what we eventually settled on is an idea that she had that's actually from a 5th edition race. And we tried to figure out, okay, how can we work this into a 2nd edition game? And I think it's going to work okay. She wants to play a Grimalkin. Grimalkin is kind of like a lynx-sized feline race that its normal state looks like a lynx-sized cat. And it has language, and it has all ability scores, and it can take classes and do all this kind of stuff, but it has some limitations on the types of things it can do in every class. And it's a shape changer, so it can change its shape into other forms, but normally it runs around as an overgrown house cat. And so the idea was that during non-combat sessions would be very vital in doing things like searching and reconnaissance and interacting with the other PCs and with NPCs, being able to find things because of its appearance, just in a way that, that the other party members could not do. And then in combat, depending on the class it takes, there could be a limited set of things that this creature could do. And we could have it set up so that it would then go ahead and participate in combat with a limited set of options. And everybody would kind of know what the options are. So if the player can't be there, she's fine with other people saying, well, the Grimalkin does this, and the Grimalkin does that, and the Grimalkin does the other. Because it's not like there's a whole lot it could do in a combat situation, but it can still be useful and still help the party in the combat situation. So we kind of worked on that. That took a long time to figure out because there's all the logistics of well, if we're going to have one character like that, what do we need to do with the other characters to make sure we have a well-balanced party? So one person is going to play a half-elf ranger. One person is going to play a halfling, but not a Greyhawk halfling. This is going to be a psionic rogue Dark Sun halfling. And that player is working up a backstory, subject to my approval, of how their character got from Dark Sun to Greyhawk. And we talked briefly about it. And once I see what is all fleshed out down on paper, I may have a few little tweaks and everything. But we've got that. So that. And then we have one player that's going to play a druid. And so we'll have 2 shape changers in the party. We'll have one fighter that's more like a dex fighter in the ranger. And then we'll have this Grimalkin. And there's actually, for Grimalkins, there's actually a barbarian build, and there's a fighter build. I don't think barbarians are 2nd edition, so we can't use that one. I'm going to limit it to what classes are available in 2e. But it's another dex-based fighter build. But it gets some bonuses on its natural attacks. And it actually, it's, you you look up cat in the monster manual, and it's like it does 1 point with its little claws. No. It gets actual attacks and dice damage with its claws. So we are recruiting. We have one player who wasn't able to show up because they had a family emergency. So we don't know what they're playing. They're a player that's recruited by one of our existing players. And they said, well, I'm going to double check with them and make sure they're really coming. And, and they're intending to show up on a regular basis and play the game. And then I'm going to open up on Roll20, I'm going to open up spots for 2 more players. So next week we will have yet another character generation session. And we will finish that up. And then at some point, once we have all the characters created, I'm going to begin going through and doing individual one-on-one sessions that will happen on Saturday nights, and they'll be recorded. They probably won't get. I haven't decided whether those will get uploaded to the archive. All this planning stuff is not getting uploaded to the archive, but it's all being recorded for my benefit and for my records. But these guys are. I'm going to do one-on-one sessions with them to explain how their characters get from where they are in the world of Greyhawk at the time of character creation to where our adventure is going to start. Because, as I explained to them last night, this is going to be something of a greatest hits campaign, and we are going to start the campaign with one of the most classic modules, if you will, adventures, we would call it in the adventure arcs, we would call it in 5th edition, that's ever been created, and that is the original Temple of Elemental Evil. So we're going to do that original Temple of Elemental Evil to begin the campaign, which was written for levels 1 through 8. So that's going to be a good, probably 20 to 40 sessions, getting us up to level 8 in the game. And then we'll figure out where our story goes. I told them that I have several different options already based on the content that I own. And then I also invited them, as we play through, if they think of other classic story arcs they would love to play, maybe some that they've never played they would really like to play, feel free to suggest those, because we can always throw those into the mix, and then depending on which, what the party does and how they respond, that's going to help me determine basically which of the possible branches we go down next. But I have a plan that takes us all the way up through several classic modules, several classic story arcs, including searching for and assembling the Rod of 7 Parts. And I already told them that if we go down that route, I plan to hide the 7th part of the Rod of 7 Parts in the Tomb of Horrors, so that we'll get to play through that. So, that was the spiritual ancestor to Tomb of Annihilation, and features the same bad guy, same arch villain at the end of Tomb of Horrors that is at the end of Tomb of Annihilation. So, and that's where he came from. So this is really exciting, really fun. I think we're going to have a lot of fun. I'm going to have a lot of fun running this because I've played bits and pieces of a lot of these classic stories, but I've never played them all the way through, and I've never run them all the way through. And it's just kind of like going to. This would be kind of like going to a Monsters of Rock concert where it's all your favorite bands are playing, and they all play your favorite songs. So that's kind of what we're going to be doing in this particular Saturday night campaign. So I hope you will join us when we get started. I'll obviously let you know when our first actual play session is. We have at least one more week of character creation. We'll see if we need any more than that, because I want the players to be really comfortable with the characters they've created and understand where they're going. And then we will get started playing. All right, so Walker of Waterdeep was a packed session, a very packed session that had a lot more that I had to cram into it this week than I was expecting. I was expecting to have something of a ritual that was going to cleanse the corruption on the felled guardian, and restore that, and then hand out a couple of treats to a couple of players in terms of the scaling items that they were going to receive. However, the party went through a wrench in my plans last week because Adamant and Inca wound up dying in the fight against Ryusei, the Falling Star. So, during the week, I worked with the two of them, and I asked them to give me their thoughts on, in Adamant's case, his thoughts on the Warforged afterlife, and in Inca's case, her thoughts on the Minotaur afterlife. And they both gave me some really cool ideas. So what we started with is we started with two individual, well, it was going to be two individual scenes and then a partial party scene, but because of some logistics, Heather was stuck in traffic and was unable to get to back home by the start of the campaign. She let us know she was going to be a little late, so I've worked things around a little bit. We started with Adamant's solo scene, and Adamant found himself in, a blacksmith's paradise, basically in a big, huge forge area. Found the dwarven cleric that had created him there, and saw him as a slightly younger man than Adamant had ever known him in life. And the two of them had a conversation, and Adamant realizes that he is in the cellar of the celestial mansion where Moradin, the creator god of the dwarves, lives. And Moradin and his wife actually showed up. They came down to check on the progress that Bilgar, the dwarf that created Adamant, was making on a commission that the deity had given him for a cleric in a plane that nobody has ever heard of before. I wonder what that means. So they were making he was making that, and they talked to Adamant, and then Moradin said, well, you have two choices. There's a forge here. It's been waiting for you, and it will be waiting for you. And your friends are back there. Either choice is valid. Which way do you want to go? And then I made him hold off on telling us what his answer was. Then I shifted to the mountaintop. So we had Elora and Oyahusa and Gallibond. And Gallibond is part Dragonborn, so that it would be really important for him to have something to do at this juncture, because this was, a fight against a spirit guardian of the realm that is in the form of a dragon. So he was the one that had to find the corrupted scale, the scale that was basically causing the corruption on Ryusei, the Fallen Star. And he had to physically remove that. And that makes another thing with him being the barbarian. So he had been playing kind of a long game of his character gradually transforming into a custom class, because all of them have access to a custom class. And the way I designed it, the custom class is built around a scaling magic item that I'm giving them each. And the barbarian already has his, the Warforged already has his. So they are already technically able to be in their fully realized custom class. But the barbarian kind of had been wanting to play a long game in his transformation. And so I had told him a few weeks ago, I said, hey, I think this would be a good time for you to finish that up. You've been dragging it out. There's going to be a significant moment here. You'll know it, because I'll tell you it's happening. but just be ready for it. And so he was like, okay. And so when he pulls the corrupted scale off of Ryusei as he's laying there unconscious, I said this wave of energy rushes over him, and he feels like the last bits of his transformation are clicking into place. And I let him describe what that looked like. So that was cool. He got a chance to describe that. Um, and so then by that time, Heather was back. So once he got all transformed, we then paused there and we went over to Inca Yelka. And I had her describe what the Minotaur afterlife was like. And it's really interesting. She's playing a Minotaur bard. Okay, so not a class and race combination that you would normally think of, but a very interesting choice, and I really like it. I like those kinds of interesting choices. So she's playing a Minotaur bard, and she had decided that she was going to follow as a deity a halfling deity. So she's a devotee of a halfling deity. Interesting. So I had to really work to find out something. And she had actually given me, to her credit, she had written up a lot of detail. So I didn't have to work to fit that in. She kind of knew how that would fit into her afterlife story. So I basically took a couple of beats from what she had given me and then let her sort of describe where she was, what she was seeing. I would set the scene that you're in your village of your childhood. So what do you see here? And then a little bit later, I took a beat of some of the people that she saw from the afterlife, and then she went off to her little meditation hill. And while she was there, that's when I had her halfling deity show up. And she was talking about how she was, couldn't believe she was back here, but how she felt so bad about leaving her friends. And the halfling deity is like, yeah, well, I think you have a choice. And once again, just like with Adamant, you have the choice. You can either go down that fork of the path and go back to your village and stay with them, or you can go down that path where you see those faint lights out there. And by that time, as she looked, she could then also see the forms of 4 large serpentine figures. And then a 5th serpentine figure rises to join them and gathers around the lights that she sees. And so, as the goddess talks to her, a portal forms, and she sees a faint outline of her body there, along with her friends. And she has the choice. What's she going to do? And so then, before I let her answer, I went back to the hill, and I said that, okay, Gallibond, you're kind of stunned from this transformation that you had for a moment, but now you remember you got to take that healthy scale that you guys brought with you and put it back in place where the wound was. And when he does, there's kind of a ripple that goes through Ryusei, the falling star, and it actually changes the form of Ryusei. And I could do that because Magic the Gathering, and now you're seeing why I chose this Guardian as the one that was going to be there. They've actually printed 2 different versions of Ryusei the Falling Star. So the artwork is completely different in the 2 of them. So I chose one artwork as the corrupted Ryusei, the other artwork as the cleansed Ryusei. So it's kind of like a Gandalf the Grey versus Gandalf the White situation. Um, Not really, because Gandalf was never corrupted, but this new form of Ryusei, he actually takes on a new name in my lore. He changes from Ryusei the Falling Star to Ryusei the Guiding Star. Is now his new name. So with a new look to him. So they thought that was pretty cool. And then um, the five spirit guardians, they said, well, you have risked your lives and risked your very existence to help us cleanse our sibling. It's only right that we help you. And then they gather in a circle, and I said it's a five pointed circle, or a five. I forget exactly the terminology I use, but a 5-pointed circle around. And as I arranged them, I don't know if any of them picked up on this, but as I arranged them, I had looked at the way the design of the back of the Magic the Gathering cards are. So I put the white guardian at the top. I put the green guardian at like 10 o'clock, the blue guardian at 2 o'clock, the red guardian at 7 o'clock, and the black guardian at 4 o'clock. So they're arranged in the same way that the pips on the back of the Magic the Gathering cards are. So I just thought, okay, that would be kind of a neat little homage to the Magic the Gathering game. And then I went back to the two players that had been felled, and I described how they saw a portal in front of them, or one of the pathways leads to a portal. They can see their friends beyond the portal. They can see these 5 spirit guardians, and they can see a shimmering form of the body that they've known there on the ground. And on the mountain, the other players, or the other PCs, they see a shimmering form of the body of Adamant and a shimmering form of the body of Inca. And the guardians tell them, we have prepared the way. Now it is their choice. They must decide if they will walk through and come back. And then I finally let Adamant's player and Inca's player tell us whether they were coming back or not. And both of them decided they were going to come back. But I kind of stretched that out and let them have kind of a really cool, if your character's going to die, you ought to at least have a decent afterlife scene, I think. Unless the character's dying because you have to move away and you're not going to be part of the game anymore, which is fine. I've done that too. I've taken, in this very campaign, I took a player who left the game and wasn't going to be coming back. At least, said they weren't going to be able to come back for a long time, if they ever did. And I had them get murdered off stage, but then one of the things I had the rest of the party do is have to go and solve the murder. So I used that as I used a party leaving, or a player leaving the game, as a way of having something dramatic happen to their character, so that it would involve the other players going and doing something about it. So that's kind of a cool little thing that you could do as well, I think. So then the balance, so then they got 2 cool magic items. Elora, the druid, she got a staff. And this staff is called Junkai's Branch. And Junkai's Branch is a magic item. It's a magical staff. It's based on a magic item or an artifact item out of Magic the Gathering. The artwork that you'll see on the screen is from that card. And then I wrote up a whole series of powers that it does. Now, I'm not going to bore you guys with what those powers are. If you want to watch the campaigns on Sunday, you can see, as she begins to use this, what it does for him. And then Oyahusa he also received an item. He received a sword. And the sword that he received is actually a sword that is out of the Kamigawa block. It is called Tatsumasa the Dragon's Fang. And it is tied into the lore and the backstory of this character. Um, the player who's been playing Oyahusa, he likes having a very long arc and very gradually building up his character and sort of finding out more information about his character. He also had an answer to a burning question that his character has had. Uh, he told me at character creation, he said his character's last name is Kamigawa, but he grew up on Toril. He never knew his parents, and he had no idea why he had the name Kamigawa. That's just what the monks at the monastery where he was raised told him. So, this episode, he got to find out the names of his parents and why he was called Kamigawa. So, that was a little bit of a revelation for him. And then, of course, I gave his parents kind of an uncertain end to their story, at least as far as what was known by these spirit guardians. So now he's got more potential mysteries to solve. And this sword, it's also a scaling item. And when I say a scaling item, I mean that that's a non-standard thing for 5th edition. And I don't know that D&D has ever done that. The closest they have come to that is in 4th edition, where you would find in like the Adventurer's Vault, you'd find a magic item, and there would be like 3 or 4 different versions of it. One version would be something that was appropriate for a level 5 character, and it would have a certain cost and certain abilities. Then another one would be appropriate for like a level 15 character, and it would have stronger abilities and it would cost a lot more. And then there was one that would be appropriate for a level 25 character, and it was really expensive and had a lot more abilities. So that's kind of what I mean by a scaling item. It's an item that the character can receive at any level. And it's a cool magic item for the time you receive it, but the power curve is consistent with, at tier 1, it's consistent with an uncommon item. Actually, it's consistent. All of them have features of several uncommon items at tier 1. Tier 2, they have the feature of, features from 2 or 3 rare magic items, which is appropriate for tier 2. Then they add some stuff from very rare items at tier 3, and then some stuff from legendary items at tier 4. And it retains all of the powers of lower levels. So when I say scaling, I mean it gets more powerful and it gets more powers. It unlocks more powers as your character rises into a different tier of play. Now, because they have these items and because they have custom classes, that's why I supercharge the enemies that I throw at the party, because otherwise it wouldn't be a challenge. Now, I don't feel like I'm giving them stuff that's overpowered, because I have the entire catalog of monsters that I can throw at them. I can throw as much stuff as I need at them to make it as hard as I want to make it. But I think some of the players, the way they talk about other games they've been in, it's like, oh yeah, these are really cool items and they seem pretty well balanced. Because I remember getting custom magic items in other games and it's like, whoa, they're way overpowered. But they feel like these are fairly well balanced for where they are. So I'm hoping that As long as they have fun with it, and as long as it doesn't break the game, I'm fine. And I've told them all, well, I reserve the right to tweak as we go along in case I discover, ooh, I've kind of underpowered your item or I've overpowered this item. I may need to tweak it to try to balance things a little bit. So we'll see. But so far that hasn't been an issue. And then they wound up going back to the Iganjo Keep. Thank you. I'll remember the name eventually. And they were reunited with the new queen and her wife, who saw that they had had the snot beat out of them in this battle. And, especially Inca and Adamant both have permanent disfigurements. And that's not something I imposed on them. That's an option I gave them. I told them during the week, I said, all right, your character has died. Do you want to have a permanent reminder of that death in terms of a disfigurement? And Adamant chose yes, he was going to have some scarring and evidence of heat stress in the metal of his Warforged armor skin. So it's got some of that blue sheen, and then he also did some etching, or he used some acid to sort of cleanse that, and he realized that there's actually several scars. One of the scars I did because of the fact that Ryusei is associated with red mana, and also because he's a forge cleric, which means he is associated with fire magic. I had one of the scars look like the Magic the Gathering symbol for red mana. So that little fireball thing, that symbol that you're probably seeing on your screen right now, that is one of the scars that he bears. And I said, you can put that anywhere. And he said, it just goes on my arm, where everybody can see it. And then with Inca, because she's a Minotaur, probably unsurprisingly, it was damage to both horns. One horn was almost completely broken off. The other was shattered and split, and had to be shortened. And the party was like, hey, well, when we get back to Waterdeep, there are a few Minotaurs there, and I know a couple of them that actually have silver caps on the end of their horns. So we can get you some prosthetic horns if you want them. And she was like, oh, okay. so we have that will be in the future of the party. So it was a good session. They started doing a little bit of planning for going after Hidetsugu. At the very end of the session, a scout came in to say they had found where Hidetsugu is in Takanuma Swamp. That's where they're going to be heading once they finish their planning for this battle. I've built that up as an epic battle. I'm revisiting that a little bit, because having two characters die in this, I don't want to get into it. I want character death to be something very rare in this game. So I'm going back and looking at how I've tuned that fight and making sure that it'll be challenging, I hope, but not something that's going to be people outright dying in the battle. I want them to feel like they earned the victory if they win, but I want to give them, I don't want them to be. I don't want people to feel like, oh my God, every time we have a battle against a boss monster, he's going to try to kill some of us. That's like, that gets old after a while, and that stops being fun. If it happens once in a blue moon, and you get kind of a cool scene out of it, that's okay. But if it starts being a regular occurrence, who is again? So, want to be careful how I have that tuned. I've told them all along that fighting Ryusei will weaken their next enemy. So they're probably expecting it to be not quite as difficult, and that's kind of the expectation I have set for them. I want to be sure, as I go back and look at my notes and the balance and everything, I want to be sure that I hold to that. Thank you all for stopping by. Please subscribe to the channel, like the video, share the video, click the post notification bell so that you get notified every time new content drops on the channel. And, as I always say, try to keep your games interesting so that you have tales from your table that you can share as well. Good night, everybody.